taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having us today.
We actually have 3 releases this week. Audrey Harrison has a release, and her book is Captivating the Earl, which is book 3 in the Country House Mysteries. And the cover for this has a balloon on, and I really like. I just love it so much. But Audrey couldn't join us this week, so we'll catch up with her another time. But I'll make sure I slide the link to the book so that you can also fall in love with the balloon. And grab your copy. I'll make sure I put it in the comments. But I thought we could start this week by talking about Linda's book, which is a Lion's Den book, and it's The Lady of the Lion. Can you tell us about this one?
So this is my second foray into the Lion's Den Club. My first one was The Courage of a Lion. And this one I went in a completely different direction in terms of my characters. And it actually features 3 romances. And it's a little bit longer than a typical Lion's Den book. They didn't make me cut it down, so I was glad for that because it's 65,000 words. But
that is a little bit longer.
Yeah, so you get a little more for your money on this one. I have my my main hero is Jeffrey. He is the second son of an earl. And he was an officer in the army, and he gets recalled because his father and older brother have both died suddenly. So he finds himself an earl of an earldom that is nearly bankrupt. And he's recommended then to go to the Lion's Den and speak with the matchmaker there about finding a rich wife. Meanwhile, a young widow named Annabelle wants to return to London with her young son. Her husband was a viscount, but she used to be a courtesan at a very high-end brothel in London. And her concern about returning to London, of course, is that she'll be recognized by someone. And but at the same time, she realizes she needs to remarry, and she wants to make sure she finds a husband who can help raise her son as a viscount. So she heads up to London with him, and in the process of having him fitted for clothes at a tailor shop, Jeffrey comes in, recognizes her, and makes a comment about the boy. And it sets off this huge misunderstanding, but at the same time, she's freaked. She goes to her mother, who was a friend of Bessie Dove Lyons, and she is also a current mistress of, or about to take on the mistress duties with a new earl. And so her mom recommends she goes and sees the matchmaker. And so that's how things get started. And from there, it was just a fun and crazy foray into how these two are going to end up together or not. And I got to do a lot of research on it about things like toy soldiers, for example.
Oh, cool.
Because
I want to know about that.
Okay, so the boy, she finds a tin of these toy soldiers. And back at this time, the little toy soldiers, they were called flats because they weren't 3-dimensional. They were cut out of tin, and then they were formed slightly and painted and then mounted on oval bases. And you would get like 12 in a set. And they were made first in Germany and then in the Netherlands. And so people who collect those now, if you can find them, they're somewhat rare, but I found good examples of them to use for this book. I was surprised that 3-dimensional tin soldiers weren't created by the company called Britain until later in the 1800s. And so the ones that we know from our youth are like maybe, like my brother played with plastic soldiers, of course, but the more common tin soldiers that we think of today didn't exist back at this time. So I had to use what were called flats.
I wonder how many of those have fallen between floorboards.
Yeah, except for their little oval bases on them. That would have been the only thing that would have prevented them from going all the way through.
Oh, wow. Well, and your heroines in this, your heroine and her mother both have an unusual situation, and we always know that Bessie Dove Lyon has an interesting situation too. So that the idea of heroines that are not necessarily straightforward or typical is, I think, really compelling too.
Right, and that's that is one of the kind of the guidelines for working in this collected world, is to have a woman who's in search of a titled man, usually because she's either compromised or It just needs needs the protection.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that word compromise does a lot of work, doesn't it? Well, we know about second chance titled or second son titles, because that is a reoccurring theme, and that's something that shows up in Alexa's books from time to time, but maybe not in this series because we have a brand new series. I'm so excited about this. So excited about this. Strongs of Shadowcrest, and this book one is The Duke's Unexpected Love. Can you tell us about the book and the series?
Well, I love a resourceful, intelligent heroine, and that's what you get out of Sophie. She is going to marry an older, wealthy man, which seems a common theme in a lot of books. But the problem is, he is not part of polite society. He is new money. He is as far from polite society as possible. He has spent decades building this shipping empire. And so she is really looked down upon. They do not get invitations to events. And she just cleaves to her husband. He sees how smart she is. He gets her to help him run his business. And then when he passes, she becomes not just his widow, she begins running the shipping empire. So then that totally ostracizes her from the Tom. And so, she's just kind of written off that world because they've written her off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of her story. James is going to be the first of the Strongs that gets his love story. And I don't want to give too much away. He was taken by a child when he was a child.
Oh.
And so he was so young, he doesn't even really remember he is James Strong. He has been, given another name. And when he winds up in London, he starts experiencing some flashbacks and sees someone from his past. And all of a sudden, pieces start falling into place. And he discovers he's not just the captain of a ship, he's actually a marquis. And not too soon after that, then he will become the Duke and all. And he is going to be a very unconventional Duke who falls for this very unconventional woman and everything. The whole series is just the happily ever afters of all of these Strongs. Since he vanished and his mom had passed away, his dad remarried, and the wife had 4 daughters. So,
So
get an heir.
And
the wife also takes in her 2 twin nieces because their mother passes away. So she raises these 6 girls, and she's a very unhappy marriage. And so when James finally realizes who he is and comes and, claims to be head of the household, he loves these girls. They're not half sisters to him. They are actually true sisters. So you get his story, the 4 siblings of his, their stories, and then the love stories of 2 of these girl cousins. And then we also get his stepmother's story because she's only about 10 years older than he is. And so she's actually going to fall for James's first mate. So it's going to be a duchess and Drake actually steps up to become the captain in James' place. So it was fun writing about a family again. I had not done so since my very first Regency series, which was the St. Clairs. And my theme really since then has kind of been the family is the family you choose. And so I've had all kinds of friends come together. So it was fun writing about a true family, this time around.
And I love the idea of an older brother and all of the sisters. There's so many like good spots for tenderness, and I just
Yeah. And as always, I try to have the same characters recur. I mean, you can pick up any of my books. I don't care if it's number 4 in this series or number 7, the final one. You could read them as standalones, but they are richer if you start from the beginning because you see familiar faces, familiar couples, and especially with a family, you're going to get all of that family interaction. And he is going to be very protective of these girls. And of course, Sophie, I mean, like I said, she's running a shipping empire. She's actually going to run this family now. So,
I love that. I love that idea so much, and I love that we start with it because you've written a lot of male centric kind of series recently. We've gotten a lot of second sons and a lot of unexpected dukes, and Yeah, I like
Yes.
the idea of there being a
Yeah. And of course, it was fun because this time I put together a little different package for this series. 5 of them are full length novels. Then there's a Regency duet for the twin cousins.
oh, fun.
And they're meaty. They're like 35 or 40,000 words each. So they're together. And let me tell you, this was the hardest thing I have ever written because it's happening at a house party. I outlined the house party, oh, they're going to do this day and this day kind of thing. And then I would write a chapter for one sister. And then I would write a chapter for the other one. And if Allegra got kissed in this book, well, then she told Lyric about it in that book. And then, and I'm trying to balance the 2 women, the 2 heroes who were friends at one point, and they are estranged from each other. And now they wound up marrying sisters. And of course, they'll all come back together. But it was difficult. I felt like I was juggling balls, and I am not a juggler. So it was interesting to do. And then the stepmother, her story is just a novella. So you get a little bit of everything in this series, but there'll be 7 total that come out. They start next Friday, and then they'll go all the way through, I think it's October.
Oh, awesome. That idea of juggling a house party thing is something that a couple of other authors have done here recently. Emily did it with her Christmas series. And I think Mary Lancaster's new series is also that, everything takes place within the same period of time. And I often wondered about how you keep track of where, just even physically, where everybody is within things.
It can get difficult. And like I said, you don't want to repeat things from one novella to the next and everything. So I might mention, them going to, play Pall Mall. And then in the other book, they actually have the round, where that happens. They go into dinner in one book, but then the other book, they're already out of dinner and something happens in the drawing room that night. So I was pretty much tearing my hair out. I told Mr. Aston, do not ever let me write 2 at the same time and try to, juggle balls like this. And so he just kind of nods politely and says, yes, dear.
That fuss if it comes up again.
It will. It will. I will get some seed of an idea, and it will start sprouting, and I'll start writing, and then I will be right back in this same position again. But
Well, speaking of seeds of an idea, Linda, you talked a little bit about the research that you did for this book, and I know that everybody does research into historical periods, and I thought perhaps we could talk about that for a little bit, and then also if there are contemporary things that kind of help fill your well or give your brain a chance to rest while you're between stories.
Sure. For me, a lot of the things that little kernel of idea may be from having read something when I'm researching something else. You get down that rabbit hole, and it might be hours before I come back out. But in the meantime, I suddenly latched on to something and think, well, I maybe can't use this now, but I can set this aside and use it in a future book. So I have a folder just absolutely full of
A
material.
paper folder?
Oh, it's so thick. I'll print out stuff, or I'm a member of the Royal Oaks Foundation, which is the National Trust arm here in the United States.
Cool.
And their quarterly magazines are just full of great articles about these historical houses that the National Trust owns. And in those articles, there'll be all kinds of great nuggets about the people that inhabited those houses and the artwork in them and things like that. And so,
wow.
Yeah, so they're great resources for finding kernels of fun stuff to use. And then there'll be other things where I'm just, because I'm working in a certain year, if you research the things that happened in that particular year, you can find lots of fun historical backdrop stuff to use. And so I always love finding stuff like that. I also have books that take place in ancient Greece. And so for a long time, I was just studying ancient Greece stuff. But so much of the thing about using ancient references to Greek stuff is it was such a big deal during the Regency era. People were just obsessed with anything Greek. And so it works out great because you can learn all these stories about the Greeks and about mythology and whatnot, and you can still use them in your Regency and early Victorian stories. So
Oh, that's really interesting to think of, because you think about the fascination with chinoiserie and like decorations and things, but I didn't realize that about ancient Greece. So it's like a double layered thing.
Yeah,
Awesome.
fashion, architecture, just they were absolutely obsessed. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well,
So
I'm
do
like
you,
you, Linda. I hoard research. I will go down the rabbit hole and I will just have reams, volumes of it. And but then I can scatter that through so many different books. In each series, I probably have one house party. And I've gone back time and time again. I don't do the physical anymore. I've got carpal tunnel, so it's very hard for me to write. But I have layers of things on my computer, and just house parties, the food they ate, the activities they did, how long they lasted, when they were taking place, all of that kind of stuff. And so you just pull little tidbits each time and sprinkle those through different novels. And I'm the same way. A lot of my heroes have been like the second son you mentioned and gone off to war, so I have just volumes of stuff on the Napoleonic Wars, especially on the peninsula. And each time, that I want to write about a soldier, I go back to that folder and, read through it. And it's like, okay, if I said it in 1807, this can happen in 1809. This battle happens. And okay, if he was at Talavera with Wellington, then I can put him here and, that kind of stuff. So I'm a former history teacher. So the history part of me, I gobble that up. And I have to be really careful not to become too lost in it.
Right.
But I think that's one thing that readers who read historical romances, they like. They like the characters, they like the romance, but they like learning about those tidbits, why they were interested in Greek art and how that influenced fashions and the things that people ate and even just the time, things occurred. I think one of my things that I really love mentioning in every other book or so is morning calls don't happen in the morning.
No.
Early afternoon. A new Regency reader, they need to understand things like that, So I usually have someone in the series that's kind of fish out of water. And so someone can explain to them, well, this is kind of done and this is kind of done. And, oh yeah, morning calls happen in the afternoon and that kind of thing. So I just, like I said, I love the research and I love to sprinkle it throughout.
Yeah. As a reader, I love that. You're right. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I love most. And I'm hoping that none of them are listening. But I had really bad history teachers.
Oh.
Because there's
you would have been a great person. I did lots of projects. My kids really enjoyed.
I would have loved somebody who could have made the stories of that come alive for me, in a way that I could have engaged in it, rather than just here's this list of stuff you got to memorize, because I could do that for the test, but then it was gone and I have no kind of reference past that.
Well, I had fun with this series because I really hadn't gotten into shipping at all. And several people in polite society, they invested in these ships and trade was a big thing during that time. And so, I looked at maps and different shipping routes and everything. And of course, James is one of Sophie's sea captains. And so when he comes in, after being gone for almost 2 years, they do a debrief and, she's kind of revamping some of the routes that her ships are taking and everything. And it's a nice way for them to bond over something they're both interested in. But it let me bring a new aspect to a Regency, which I'd never done before. And I had fun researching something, which wasn't typical, that you see in a Regency novel.
I think too, both Alexa's stories, and we travel a lot. And so, like, for example, trips to England, it's just amazing what you can find on those travels that you can then also use in books. So, for example, the last time I was in London, I went to Cleveland Row and I stood in front of the house that is the Lion's Den. And it's just because it exists, on Cleveland Row there, right near Green Park. And so it was kind of fun to walk up and down that street, look at the adjacent townhouses and whatnot, and get ideas. So
put yourself in that place, literally in that place.
Yeah.
Yep. Fantastic. So you've talked both about the importance of research and how that can lead you to ideas. Do you get your characters first? Do they come to you, or do you get the kernel of something you want to have happen and then find the characters that work for that part of the story?
I think I'm a character first person, or situational. Maybe it's more situational. And so then I develop the characters for a situation that I want to write about. And over the years, I've developed, I have a Excel spreadsheet of all my characters. So about a little over 500 of them so far.
Oh,
And
you
so
genius.
I also have a genealogical chart. If I
Oh,
were to print it out, it's about 50 inches wide and about 13 inches tall with 9-point type of
great.
all these families and all these interconnected relationships, because I tend to write my books in that world, and I have to be careful not to marry off somebody too
Oh,
close a
no.
relative.
Oh,
And
you've
so,
got the babies and stuff. I mean,
oh,
I think that's something that
I'm
budding
into,
writers need to hear. You should just write this stuff down because you think you're going to remember, but you're not. You're not
yeah,
going to remember their names. You're not going to remember when they were pregnant. You're not going to remember the hair color or eye color or
oh,
anything. But
I'm
that
into,
genealogy is brilliant.
yeah, I'm like fourth generation on some of these families, because you start them way back when you're referring to them, and then now that I'm up into the early Victorian era, these people that I married off in the Regency area have had kids, and now their kids are, so
Oh.
I'm dealing with that next generation of kids.
So are you writing in a linear progression from series to series so that you move
So
forward in time, or do you go back and
not necessarily. Like, I just finished a book this yesterday, that's for a series that I'm a part of, a multi-author series that
forth?
starts coming out in March. And it's in like 1816, where the book I finished a couple of weeks ago takes place in 1844.
Okay. So
And
you're,
so I'm in the same world,
mhm.
but I'm just dealing with a different time frame for those. So
Well, I'm like you. I'm a big believer in keeping that Bible.
yes.
I have to create characters first, and I've mentioned on this little telecast before. I have to hit on the right name. I will agonize for 2 or 3 days to get the right names that match together, and then once I get the name, that's when I see the person. So I start thinking of them physically, and I start assigning character traits, and I know, either they're kind, or they're stubborn, or they're determined, or whatever. And based upon their personalities, then I think about the situation. I look at the year, I look at what's happening, I look at different tropes, and just pursue what I want to write about.
Sure.
But for each book, I keep a cast list, and I send that to my editor. She likes to see that and everything. And, it's his servants and her servants, and his friends and her friends, and his family and her family, and all the miscellaneous people. And, with this
Yeah.
current book coming out, who works in the shipping offices, who works in the warehouse, who's in the docks, who's on the ship's crew. I mean, it becomes pretty complicated.
Mhm.
And,
Sure.
once again, in a series, a lot of those names move from one series to the next.
Right.
So, yeah, I have to write it down. I do not remember names. I mean, you think
Right.
after teaching 30 years, I would know something in names, but no, I was horrible at names. So,
And I think it's like you're caught in the moment and you're caught in this couple's story, and things are very important in that moment. But then as soon as you finish it, you get kind of, you fall in love with the next couple and get entranced with the next couple. And,
Yeah.
it's just a lot to keep track of without writing it down. And an
yeah.
editor once who would say, you described his eyes as hazel on this page and as green on this page. Did you mean to do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
no, I did not.
I'll even cut and paste. When I've got James and his whole family, I'll do the cut and paste and move that over to the next story, and then just kind of, change out him with the sister that's being talked about. And that way I have all the family, their physical descriptions, the names of the servants, and, and then I can just add the other people who come into the story and all. But yeah, you're right about falling in love. I mean, I love the people I write for, but then I start the next book and I fall in love all again, with that couple. And in my world, it's nice because you usually see previous couples. And so I get the treat of writing about them at a different point in their life, us seeing beyond the happily ever after, at the same time, I'm creating that new HEA for a different couple.
Right. In my case, I'm a very visual person. So I write a bit about that character, but I am really good about grabbing images that I
Oh,
can use
cool.
on a character sheet, because then I not only have that, the the visual. I have that
Mhm.
written description, but I have the visual, and then I can supply that to my audiobook narrator, and then he actually voices the characters based on maybe who
Mhm.
those pictures are of, or it helps him to when he's defining the characters for the audiobook.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. I've given my cast list to my audio narrators as well. And, and they've been so good about even contacting me. How do you pronounce this?
uh,
And everything. And I appreciate that.
Mhm. Oh, awesome. I remember MJ Rose talked ages and ages and ages ago about starting a box of things that her characters would have. She'd fill a little box or a little, and I
oh,
know Jenny Cruzy uses collages, as a way of just having touch points. Like, this is the perfume that they would wear. This is the kind of flowers they would like, just as a way of getting to know when you're in that beginning part and you're not exactly sure who everybody is yet.
right.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
kind of interesting to think about doing that.
The
Yeah.
Pinterest boards are kind of a way
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
used to really build those up for just for reference and
Yeah.
have those
Yeah.
visuals.
I would imagine, like, for historical romance, there are things like clothes and things that you have to pay attention to. What's the dress that she wore to the party? If he's going to fall in love with her there, then, like, you have to have a picture in your head of what it is, even if you don't describe it extraordinarily in
Yeah,
detail.
I run the movie in my head as I write. I mean, I'm sitting here and then, the fingers are doing this, but if I say, he crossed the room to her, I see if it's left to right or right to left. I mean, it's the movie in my head. I'm just kind of recording what I see.
Oh, wow. Wow. And I know, Alexa, you dictate quite a lot rather
Yes.
than type. Is it different when you're talking through things and having those two things going on at once? This is me doing what it feels like to see things and also say things at the same
I
time.
walk some of the same routes in the morning because I'm so familiar with them. I think my subconscious just kind of lets me know where to go because that movie is going the entire time, and I'm just talking into my phone. And, I know some people, if they're passing me, they're like, what is she doing? Or, I'll even say something about, new chapter or something. And so maybe that clues in a few people if I walk by, oh, she's a writer and all, but I have to see it. I'm a visual person. That's how I learned when I was in school. And that's how I am as a writer.
Yeah.
Wow. Linda, have you tried dictating at all, or do you sit?
I have tried so hard. My words have to come through my fingers. I've decided because it just doesn't work for me. So, and I'm fine with that. I've been typing since I was in 7th grade, and so I
Mhm.
have no trouble. That's the way it works for me. But like Alexa, I've got this movie going on in my head while I'm typing, and sometimes it's happening faster than I can type, which can
Yes.
be frustrating.
Best times. Those
Yeah.
are the best times.
Or you see something that you want them to do and they turn around and go do something else. And it's just like,
Yes.
wait,
Oh,
come
you
back. But,
it just gets
I
out of
have learned to
control.
follow my characters. I learned to trust them. So,
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I think when you get stuck is when you try to force them to do something that they're not
Yeah.
willing
yeah,
to.
that will involve rewrites. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
You might as well just let go, let them have control.
Awesome. Linda, are you a morning writer or an afternoon writer?
I do both. For a long time I was a night writer because I was
Oh,
working a
really?
day job, and so I really couldn't write except at night and on the weekends. But now I find that it's like whenever, as long as I'm getting like about 1,500 words in a day, which
Mhm.
is typical of the last couple weeks. I've been on a roll, mostly because I'm going on a trip at the end of the week, and so I wanted to make sure I got my manuscripts turned into my editor before I left, so I can start a new one when I'm on the road. So
What
anyway,
about you, Alexa? Are you a morning writer, afternoon writer?
I'm a morning person, but I write all day long. I'm retired, so I write full time now. And yes, I do my morning walk, I dictate, I come back and I transcribe that, tweak it, and then I just move on. So as long as I have my candle lit, I have to have that candle going. If I'm sitting, propped up
What
with
scent?
my laptop in my lap, I'm good to go.
What scent do you? What kind of candles do you like?
Vanilla and cinnamon are
Oh,
pretty
cookies.
much favorites, but at Christmas I found this great sale at Kohl's, and so I have like vanilla pear. That's a new one that I just lit, and I have a caramel hazelnut, and a caramel toffee, which I haven't gotten into yet, but I'm very eager to see because I'm someone, I love the smell of things. I cannot listen to music when I write. I don't know about the two of you, but I love music. And if I put something on, I start singing with it or mouthing it or hearing the lyrics in my head. And man, it just yanks me out of the world. It's almost like Christopher Reeve in Somewhere in Time. And it's like, you just get sucked out. So I have to have absolute quiet. And Mr. Aston knows. It's just like when you tell your kids, I don't want to know unless you're bleeding or dying.
On fire.
Back off.
I am a brain.fm user. I have been for years and years. I put it on focus. There's a creativity setting. And once that starts within 5 seconds, I am in the zone and I'm writing. And it's really odd because lately it'll cut out at about the 1 hour mark or 1 hour, 30-minute mark. I think it wants to know that you're still listening or whatever. And it just jerks me out. It's like, I think that may be why I could do like 1,200 words in about an hour and a half. And I'm like, what? Why did the music stop? So, you restart it and I'm back in the zone again. And so I've done that for years.
That's really interesting because I do the same thing with Alexa. I can't write and listen to music. And there was one dangerous period in my life where I got myself one of those bouncy chairs, like the balls. I was going to sit on the ball, and that was just.
Yeah.
We didn't go to urgent care, but it was so close. It was so close. Because writing is so sedentary for those of us who don't walk and dictate. I thought, well, this will at least keep me doing core kind of stuff. It's just going to bounce all over the room. So,
That's what a QB is for.
What's a QB?
A QB is it's a pedal device. It's
like a bicycle kind of thing.
If you've got the space under your desk so that when you pedal, your knees aren't hitting the bottom of your desk, it works great. I find that it doesn't work at my desk though, but I just use it at night. I have my regular workout earlier in the day, but every night, if I'm sitting in front of a television or I'm sitting catching up on Facebook or Threads or something, I will sit there and pedal and get like 7,000 revolutions in at night.
Oh, wow.
On that
Wow.
thing. Yeah. And that's, yeah.
And I'm such a slug. I sit at my desk for these little Zooms. The rest of my writing, I'm in my lazy boy rocker. My feet are propped up. I have my laptop in my lap, and I just do this.
Well, ladies, it's been a treat to talk to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and to share your writing process and to share about the books. I'm really excited about the new series, and I'm excited about the Lion's Den book and also about Artie's book. I'm going to make sure I put the links to all of the books in the comments. So if you haven't gotten them already, why haven't you gotten them already? But if you haven't gotten them already, you're going to grab them right away because Dragonblade books are their very best on pre-order and release. Yes. Like I said, it's a 99-cent deal. This is not even something that you have to think hard about. But if you miss it, you can always grab them in Kindle Unlimited and read to your heart's content that way, which is something that I particularly enjoy doing. So
yes. And mine, actually, the first two are on pre-order now. So
blue one. There's a purple one and a blue one.
Oh, I know. The colors in the series are just outstanding. So but I always encourage my readers, buy it on pre-order. That way it's a no-brainer. You just open your Kindle that morning and all of a sudden
there it is.
It's a treat.
There it is.
Yeah. At 99 cents.
Yeah, man. There's not much entertainment you can get for that price anymore. So ladies, thanks so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks, Evelyn. See everybody later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.